"This is not your baby." Jennifer froze mid-step, her sneakers scuffing against the pavement of the quiet, tree-lined street. For a moment, she thought she'd misheard. She turned slowly and found an older Korean woman standing a few feet away, arms folded tight across her chest, eyes locked with unsettling intensity on the baby nestled against Jennifer's shoulder. "Excuse me?" Jennifer said, certain there had been some mistake. "I said," the woman repeated, enunciating each word like she was speaking to someone slow, "that child is not yours." Jennifer let out a short laugh. She looked down at Penn, 6 months old, cheeks flushed pink from the afternoon air, dark lashes fluttering as she drifted toward sleep, then back up at the stranger. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "No," the woman said, "but I know what I'm looking at." "And what exactly are you looking at?" The woman's eyes swept over Jennifer, her deep brown skin, her natural curls pulled into a loose bun, the particular exhaustion that lived permanently under a new mother's eyes, and then dropped to Penn, whose skin was pale, almost porcelain, her eyes a soft hazel that hadn't yet decided what color they wanted to become. "A black woman," the stranger said, each word deliberate, "carrying a white baby." Jennifer's arms tightened protectively. "And?" "And how," the woman said, drawing the sentence out like a teacher losing patience with a child, "could you possibly be her mother?" For a second, Jennifer simply stared. She'd heard about people like this. She'd seen stories like this online and had said, "This definitely can't happen in reality." Now here she was, standing on an ordinary street with her sleeping daughter, being cross-examined by a total stranger who had appointed herself judge, jury, and neighborhood watch all in the same afternoon. "Ma'am," Jennifer said, keeping her voice level though her pulse had started to climb, "I gave birth to this child. 7 hours of labor, no epidural because I waited too long to ask for one, a scream so loud the nurses still bring it up when I go in for checkups. She is mine." The woman's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's what they all say." "Excuse me? Do you have proof?" Jennifer laughed again, sharper this time. "Proof? I don't carry a birth certificate on my evening walks, no. I also don't carry my passport to buy groceries." "Then how am I supposed to believe you?" "You're not supposed to do anything," Jennifer said, feeling her patience wear thin as paper. "This is my daughter. That is the entire conversation." But it wasn't the entire conversation. The woman's eyes narrowed further, and she lifted a hand, pointing directly at Penn's face as if presenting evidence in a courtroom. "Look at her. Look at that skin, that hair, and look at you." She shook her head slowly, mournfully, as though grieving something. "This is exactly how it happens. Someone spots an unattended child and—" "Unattended?" Jennifer's voice rose despite her best effort to stay calm. "She is in my arms. I am holding her right now in front of you. That is the precise opposite of unattended." A jogger slowed his pace nearby, earbuds still in, clearly trying to figure out whether this was a conversation worth stopping for. An elderly man walking a small dog paused at the corner, watching with open curiosity. Jennifer felt the heat of being observed prickle across her skin, and it only made her grip Penn a little tighter. "You're making a scene," Jennifer said quietly. "I'm making sure a child gets home safely," the woman shot back, loud enough now that the jogger actually stopped altogether, pulling one earbud free. "Everything all right here?" the jogger asked, glancing between the two women. "No," Mrs. Hung said, before Jennifer could answer. "This woman has a baby that clearly isn't hers." The jogger's eyebrows lifted, and he looked at Jennifer with a flicker of uncertainty, the kind that made Jennifer's stomach twist. He didn't say anything else, just took a small step back, uncertain which side of the sidewalk to stand on, which was somehow worse than if he'd said something outright. "I'm calling the police," the woman announced, already digging through her bag with theatrical urgency, as if she'd rehearsed this moment. Something cold settled in Jennifer's stomach beneath the anger. "If I were you, I wouldn't do that. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you that you are about to waste everyone's time, including your own, and quite possibly embarrass yourself in ways you can't take back. The woman wasn't listening. She was already dialing, phone pressed to her ear with the satisfied posture of someone convinced she was seconds away from being called a hero on the evening news. Yes, hello, I need to report a suspected child abduction. Jennifer closed her eyes briefly, praying for patience she did not currently possess. Pen, sensing the shift in her mother's body, stirred but didn't wake. Yes, a woman, she's got a white baby, no resemblance at all. Yes, I'll wait right here, officer. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jennifer looked down at her daughter and sighed. Of all the days, Pen, you could not have picked a more peaceful afternoon for your mother to be accused of kidnapping you. Pen, still mostly asleep, made a small huffing sound, as if she found the entire situation mildly inconvenient and slightly beneath her. The wait for the police felt longer than it probably was. Mrs. Hung, though Jennifer didn't know her name yet, stood a few feet away, arms crossed, occasionally glancing over with the smug satisfaction of a woman who believed history would remember her kindly for this. Jennifer paced slowly, rocking Pen, murmuring words just to fill the silence and keep herself from saying something she might regret. You know, Jennifer said finally, unable to help herself, in the time it's taken you to call the police, you could have simply asked her name, or my name, or literally anything else that didn't involve accusing me of a felony. I don't need to ask, the woman said. I can see. You can see skin color. That's all you can see. That is the entirety of your investigation. That's enough for me. Well, Jennifer muttered, it certainly explains a few things about how you move through the world. The old man with a small dog had drifted closer now, apparently deciding this was, in fact, worth the delay in his walk. Is there a problem, ladies? No problem, Jennifer said tightly. Just a woman who's decided my daughter can't possibly be mine. The old man glanced at Pen, then at Jennifer, and shrugged in a way that suggested he, at least, found nothing strange about the picture at all. Kids come out all sorts of ways. My niece married a Nigerian man. Their son has red hair. Nobody called the police over that. Mrs. Hung sniffed. That's different. Is it? The man asked. But Mrs. Hung had already turned away, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to instructions from the dispatcher. The patrol car arrived, tires crunching against the curb. 2 officers stepped out, a woman with sharp, alert eyes and an economy of movement that suggested years of experience, and a younger man whose uniform still held the stiff creases of something recently purchased, his badge gleaming with the particular shine of the newly issued. Mrs. Hung rushed toward them before they'd even finished parking. Officers, thank God. That woman there has a child that isn't hers. Look at them. They don't even match. The younger officer, his name tag read Michael, glanced nervously between Jennifer and the baby, clearly unsure how to proceed. He looked like someone whose training manual had not prepared him for this particular Tuesday. Ma'am, he said carefully, approaching Jennifer. Can you walk me through what's going on here? There's nothing to walk through, Jennifer said, keeping her tone even though irritation simmered dangerously close to the surface. This is my daughter. I was taking a walk to calm her down. This woman decided that wasn't possible because the 2 of us don't look alike enough for her taste. She's lying, Mrs. Hung snapped. Ask her for proof. She has none. Watch. Ask her. Michael hesitated, glancing toward his partner, whose name tag read Gwen. Gwen's expression was harder to read, not hostile, but watchful, studying Jennifer with the particular intensity of someone trying to place a face they'd seen somewhere before. Ma'am, Michael said again, turning back to Jennifer. Do you have identification on you, something connecting you to the child? Jennifer exhaled slowly, counting to 3 in her head before answering. I left my apartment for what I thought would be a 5-minute walk to stop my daughter from crying. I did not bring my ID. I did not bring my phone. I brought a diaper bag and a baby, because that is generally what mothers bring when their child won't stop screaming. Convenient, Mrs. Hung muttered under her breath, just loud enough to be heard. Jennifer's eyes cut sideways. I'm sorry, do you have anything better to do with your afternoon than narrate my life? I'm performing my civic duty. You're performing something, Jennifer said. I'm just not certain duty is the correct word for it. Michael, visibly out of his depth, turned to Gwen for guidance. What do you want to do? Gwen hadn't taken her eyes off Jennifer this entire time. Something about her posture, calm under pressure, spine straight even while holding a fussing infant, tugged at a memory Gwen couldn't quite place yet. Let's take this to the station, Gwen said finally. Sort it properly, on the record, so nobody can say we didn't follow procedure. Jennifer's jaw tightened, but she nodded. If a room and some paperwork were the price of ending this absurd afternoon, she would pay it and go home. Mrs. Hung looked triumphant, as though she had already won a war nobody else knew they were fighting. The ride to the station was short, but it felt endless. Jennifer sat in the back of the patrol car, pen strapped carefully into a spare car seat Gwen had produced from the trunk, watching the familiar streets of her own neighborhood slide past the window as though she were a stranger to them now. You've done this before, Jennifer said quietly to Gwen through the partition. The car seat. Not everyone keeps one in the trunk. We get calls involving kids more than people think. Never one quite like this, though. There's a first time for everything, Jennifer said, and something in her tone made Gwen glance at her in the rearview mirror, curious despite herself. At the station, Mrs. Hung's confidence only grew, blooming into something almost theatrical. She sat in the waiting area, recounting the story to anyone unfortunate enough to make eye contact, embellishing details with each retelling. The baby had been crying for help. Jennifer had looked nervous and evasive. She herself had sensed something deeply wrong from the very first second. Call it a mother's intuition. Thank God I was paying attention, she told a passing officer who hadn't asked. Most people just walk by these things. Not me, never me. Jennifer sat across the waiting room, pen now fully awake and fussy again, clearly unimpressed with the change of scenery. Jennifer bounced her gently, murmuring reassurances under her breath, trying to hold on to the last threads of her patience with both hands. Michael approached again, clipboard in hand, looking increasingly uncomfortable with the role he'd been assigned in all this. Ma'am, we just need to ask a few more questions and then we can… Officer Michael, is it? How long have you been on the force? 3 weeks, ma'am. Jennifer almost smiled despite everything. That explains quite a lot, actually. I'm sorry? Nothing personal. You're doing what you were trained to do. I just wish someone had trained you to ask better questions before jumping straight to conclusions. He shifted his weight, clearly unsure whether that counted as an insult or advice. For what it's worth, I don't think you look like someone who'd do something like this. And what does someone who'd do something like this look like, exactly? He opened his mouth, then closed it again, apparently realizing there was no good answer to that question that wouldn't dig him deeper into a hole. I'll go check on the paperwork, he mumbled, retreating. Before he'd gotten 3 steps away, Mrs. Hung appeared behind him, arms still crossed, chin lifted like she was presiding over a courtroom rather than sitting in a linoleum-floored waiting area. Have you found the real mother yet? Because that baby needs to go home to whoever is actually missing her. Jennifer's calm finally cracked at the edges, the sound of it almost audible. She is home. She is in my arms right now. I am her home, and I have been since the day she was born. We'll see about that. That was the exact moment Gwen reappeared, holding a folder, walking with the brisk purpose of someone who had just remembered something urgent. She scanned the waiting room, found Jennifer's face, and stopped mid-stride, eyes going wide. Wait, Gwen said slowly, almost to herself. Oh my God. Michael turned. What? What is it?
Gwen crossed the room in a few quick steps and, to everyone's visible confusion, snapped into a crisp, formal salute in front of Jennifer. "Agent Taeyun, I am so sorry. I didn't place you until just now." The room went silent. Mrs. Hung's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, like a fish trying to remember how to breathe air. Michael's clipboard nearly slipped from his hands. "Agent, wait, you know her? Personally?" "Everyone in this department knows her," Gwen said, still slightly flushed with embarrassment. "She's been on maternity leave for 8 months. Agent Jennifer Taeyun, one of the top-ranked detectives in the entire district. I trained under her my first year." "Hello, Gwen. It has been a while. You look well."
"Ma'am, if I'd realized sooner—" "You couldn't have known," Jennifer said. "I didn't exactly bring my badge on a walk meant to calm my crying daughter down. I wasn't expecting an interrogation on my way to the corner and back." Michael looked like he wanted the tile floor to open beneath him and swallow him whole. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I had absolutely no idea. I was only following the report that came in." "It's fine," Jennifer said, though there was steel threaded beneath the words. "You're new. You didn't know any better, and you were doing what you thought was right." Her eyes cut toward Mrs. Hung. She had no excuse at all. Mrs. Hung, stubborn to the very last, refused to surrender the field. So what if she has a badge? A badge doesn't prove the child is biologically hers. Anyone can carry identification. That doesn't explain the skin tone, the features. None of it adds up logically. "Ma'am," Gwen said, a warning edge sharpening her voice, "I would think very carefully about what comes out of your mouth next." But Mrs. Hung pressed forward anyway, apparently incapable of reading a room even when the room was actively warning her. "I'm simply saying a DNA test would clear this entire matter up within 5 minutes. If she has nothing to hide—" "You want a DNA test?" Jennifer said, stepping forward, pen now quiet again, watching the unfolding scene with wide, curious eyes, as though she too found the adults in the room somewhat exhausting. "Wonderful. Let's do precisely that. Let's investigate thoroughly, since you seem so very certain of your conclusion." Mrs. Hung faltered, just slightly, for the first time all afternoon. Well, I only meant that—" "No," Jennifer said, cutting her off. "You've been perfectly clear about what you meant since the very first sentence you spoke to me on that street. Let's not pretend otherwise now that there are witnesses." Before the tension could stretch any further, the station doors swung open and a tall man in a crisp military uniform strode in, scanning the room with urgent eyes until he found Jennifer. His rigid, disciplined posture cracked the instant he saw her face. "Jennifer!" "Taeyun!" Relief flooded her voice, despite her effort to stay composed. He crossed the room in a few long strides and pulled her and Pen into a careful, protective embrace, pressing a kiss against Jennifer's forehead. "Are you all right? I got the call and nearly ran 2 red lights getting here. Tell me exactly what happened." "I'm fine," Jennifer said. "Just had a considerably more eventful walk than intended." "Start from the beginning," he said, glancing around the room, clearly trying to determine who exactly he needed to be angry at. "I took Pen for a walk. A woman decided I couldn't possibly be her mother because our skin doesn't match. She called the police. The police brought us here. And somewhere in the middle of all that, apparently, nobody thought to simply ask me a single question before treating me like a suspect." Taeyun's jaw tightened, the muscle in his cheek flexed. "Which woman?" Jennifer tilted her head toward the corner, where Mrs. Hung sat rigid in a plastic chair, suddenly finding the floor tiles fascinating. He looked down at Pen, and his stern military bearing dissolved instantly into something soft and unguarded. "And my little princess, did you give your mother trouble too, or was this entirely someone else's fault?" Pen gurgled happily, reaching one small hand toward his face, and Taeyun laughed despite the tension still hanging in the room. Behind him, an elegant older woman entered, sharp-eyed and clearly accustomed to commanding a room the moment she walked into it. Jennifer's mother-in-law. She scanned the waiting area and stopped abruptly when her eyes landed on Mrs. Hung. "Wait a moment," she squinted, leaning forward. "Is that Mrs. Hung?" Mrs. Hung looked up, visibly startled.
You know me? Of course I know you, Jennifer's mother-in-law said, a laugh bubbling up despite everything happening around her. You're the one who spent every single women's meeting for the past 3 years narrating everyone else's business before they'd even finished telling it themselves. I once watched you interrupt a woman's own wedding announcement to ask if she was truly certain about her decision. A few nearby officers failed entirely to hide their smiles behind their clipboards. I simply believe in transparency, Mrs. Hung said stiffly, straightening her blouse.
You believe in nosiness, the older woman corrected, laughing harder now. I always told the other women it would catch up with you eventually. I simply never imagined it would land you in a police station accusing my own granddaughter's mother of stealing her in broad daylight. Mrs. Hung's face flushed a deep, humiliated red. I didn't know who she was. That is precisely the problem, Jennifer's mother-in-law said, reaching to take Pen gently from Taeyun's arms. You didn't know, and instead of simply asking, you assumed the very worst and acted on it in front of an entire street. Come here, baby. Grandma missed you terribly. Pen squealed with delight, reaching immediately for her grandmother's dangling earrings. You didn't even ask her name, the older woman added, shaking her head as she bounced Pen gently on her hip. In all your years of minding everyone else's business, I'd have thought you'd at least learn to introduce yourself first. Mrs. Hung said nothing, staring down at her own hands as though they belonged to someone else. Jennifer took a slow breath, steadying herself, and turned fully to face Mrs. Hung. The anger that had simmered through the entire afternoon settled now into something calmer, more deliberate, more dangerous in its patience. Bring me a whiteboard, she said to a nearby officer. And a marker, please. Confused but obedient, the officer retrieved one within minutes, wheeling it into the waiting area. Jennifer positioned it directly in front of Mrs. Hung's chair and uncapped the marker with a small, decisive click. You wanted proof, Jennifer said. Let's actually discuss proof, since you seem to value it so highly. She wrote a single word across the top in bold, deliberate strokes. Biology. Beneath it, genetics and heredity. A child inherits genes from both her parents, skin tone, eye color, hair texture. None of these are simple traits with one predictable outcome. They're combinations of dozens of genes, some dominant, some recessive, some that skip an entire generation and reappear 2 or 3 generations later completely unannounced. She sketched a rough diagram on the board. 2 circles representing parents, lines branching down toward a smaller circle representing a child, with notes scrawled beside each connecting line. In interracial families especially, children can be born across an enormous range of features. Darker skin, lighter skin, anything between the two, eyes that shift color entirely within the first year of life. My daughter's skin tone isn't evidence of anything except the specific genetic combination she happened to inherit from her father and from me. It isn't a mystery, it isn't suspicious, it is simply biology, and biology does not consult you before it does its work. Michael, standing near the doorway, spoke up quietly, almost to himself. I honestly had no idea it could vary that dramatically. I always assumed children looked roughly like both parents blended together. Most people assume exactly that, Jennifer said, which is precisely why the kind of assumption made on that street today is so dangerous. You looked at 2 people who didn't match your personal expectations, and instead of asking a single clarifying question, you decided you already possessed the entire answer. Mrs. Hung's composure, which had somehow held rigid through the humiliation of the salute and the reveal of Jennifer's rank, finally began to crumble in earnest. Her eyes glistened, and her hands, folded tightly in her lap, began to tremble slightly. I thought I was protecting her, she said quietly, barely above a whisper. The baby. I thought I was doing something good. You weren't protecting anyone, Jennifer said, not unkindly, but with unmistakable firmness. You were judging me based on nothing but the color of my skin next to hers.
There is a significant difference between the two, and I think somewhere underneath all that certainty, you already know that. Mrs. Hung lowered her head, shoulders curling inward. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed anything. I let my eyes make a decision my heart should have questioned first. The waiting room fell quiet for a long moment. Jennifer studied her, not with hatred, not with triumph, just a tired, weary kind of understanding that came from having explained this same lesson in one form or another more times than she could count. An apology doesn't undo an entire afternoon, Jennifer said, capping the marker. But it's a start. It's more than most people ever manage. Outside the station, the evening air had cooled, the sky painted gold and rose at its edges by the setting sun. Jennifer's mother-in-law carried pen, bouncing her gently as the baby babbled happily at a pigeon strutting along the curb. Taeyun wrapped an arm around Jennifer's shoulders, pulling her close against his side. I'm sorry you had to go through that, he murmured against her hair. I'm okay, Jennifer said, and found, somewhat to her own surprise, that she meant it. Really, I am. Still, I should have been there with you. You were at work. You can't be everywhere at once, Taeyun, no matter how much you'd like to be. She glanced back through the station's glass doors, where Mrs. Hung sat alone now, her earlier bravado entirely gone, replaced by something smaller and more human. Jennifer held her gaze for a long moment across the distance. Not with anger anymore. Not quite with forgiveness either, just closure, plain and quiet. She gave the smallest nod, then turned back toward her family, toward the baby giggling in her grandmother's arms, toward the husband who had broken traffic laws to reach her, toward the ordinary, imperfect, deeply loved life she had built. Let's go home, Jennifer said. I believe we've all had quite enough excitement for one afternoon. A child does not owe the world an explanation for the way they look. A mother does not need to match her child's complexion to prove that she gave birth to them. And sometimes, the person who thinks they have uncovered a terrible secret is simply revealing their own assumptions. And honestly, if I were Jennifer, I would have been tempted to make her attend another biology class the following morning. But Jennifer was kinder than me. She decided to forgive and forget. So tell me, if you were Jennifer, would you have forgiven Mrs. Hung? Or would you have made her apologize in front of everybody? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and share this story with someone who needs the reminder that appearances don't tell the whole story. Until next time, remember, never judge a family by what you see, because genetics has a way of surprising everybody.
Thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this story. Check out my channel for more stories. Until then, take care of yourselves.